The law calls it privileged, sacred, unbreakable. The one thing an attorney must never violate. I broke it anyway. And I would break it again. Because privilege means nothing when you've seen what I saw. He didn't know I was watching. The drawer, the gun, his hand reaching. I turned our photograph face down. Let the dead watch someone else tonight. Maya, calling for the mother who just destroyed her father. I couldn't answer. Not yet. Not until I knew what words existed for what I'd done. No one is coming. I made sure of that. The warrant, the arrest, the end of everything we were. He's in a cell tonight because of me. And he doesn't know, can't know, that it was the only way to save him. 72 hours earlier, I still believed I could save him without losing myself. 72 hours earlier. I was still Natalie Cross, senior partner. Still the woman who'd built Cross & Associates from a shared desk and a borrowed printer into something that mattered. 14 years of criminal defense, 312 clients. A reputation for precision that courts respected and prosecutors feared. I was still that woman. For 3 more days. The Harrington file was open on my desk. Routine embezzlement case, the CFO of a tech startup who'd gotten creative with expense reports. Low stakes, low drama. The kind of case I could win in my sleep, and probably had. The morning light through my office window was clean. October in Manhattan, that particular quality of gold that makes even glass towers look almost warm. I remember thinking, this is a good day. Simple, manageable. I should have known better. My phone buzzed against the mahogany. I didn't look at first. The Harrington notes needed my attention, and I was good at discipline, good at compartments, good at keeping the parts of my life that shouldn't touch separate. The phone buzzed again. I glanced down, and the good day ended. Dominic Vaughn. 2 words, 12 letters, 5 years of history compressed into a caller ID. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could decline, send it to voicemail, let him leave a message I'd listen to later, in the car, where the contained space would make his voice less large. I've never been good at letting his calls ring. I answered. Natalie. His voice was controlled, too controlled. The way he sounds when he's already decided something and wants you to believe he hasn't. I need a consultation. Privileged. Privileged. Attorney-client privilege. The legal fortress. The sacred space where a client can confess murder and his lawyer is bound by law, by ethics, by everything I've sworn to uphold, to silence. He wasn't calling as Dominic Vaughn, the man I'd married at 26 and divorced at 33. He was calling as a client. And I was supposed to pretend I didn't know the difference. When? My voice was professional, practiced. Today, 2 o'clock, the conference room at your office. I should have said no. Conflict of interest, emotional proximity, the 1,000 small ways that representing your ex-husband is professionally insane. But I've been saying that for 5 years, and I've never once meant it. I'll clear my afternoon. He hung up without goodbye. He always does. I set the phone down, stared at the wall where my bar license hung in its mahogany frame, the credential that made me who I am. Then I looked at my right hand, at the wedding ring I'd moved but never removed. The gold caught the October light, still warm, still present. 14 years of discipline, 312 clients, and I've never once been able to keep him at the distance the law requires. The Harrington file sat open on my desk. I didn't read another word. 2 o'clock, the conference room. I'd chosen the largest one, the room we use for depositions and difficult negotiations. 12 feet of mahogany table between us. Professional distance made physical. It didn't help. Dominic stood at the window when I entered. 42 years old now, and the years had sharpened him rather than softened. Dark hair threaded with silver at the temples, that jawline that could have sold watches in another life. His suit was charcoal, impeccable, cut by someone who charged more than my first year's salary. He turned when he heard me, and I saw it immediately. The thing I'd spent 15 years of marriage learning to read. The stillness. Dominic is never still unless he's already decided something. The more dangerous the decision, the calmer he becomes. He looked like marble. That's when I should have walked out. Thank you for making time. His voice was measured, controlled. You said it was urgent. I sat at the far end of the table, kept my hands flat on the surface. What's the situation? He didn't sit, he paced, a controlled circuit of the window, the wall, the window again. I watched his hands. They were steady. Too steady. Marcus Chen. The name landed like a stone in still water. Marcus Chen, his business partner, co-founder of Vaughn Industries, the man who'd been Dominic's closest friend for 15 years, until something had fractured between them that neither would discuss. What about Marcus? Dominic's jaw worked, the tell I knew better than my own face. He was containing something. He's been making demands, financial demands. He says, Dominic's voice tightened. He says he has information about the early years, the first fund, how certain capital was acquired. I understood immediately. The early years of Vaughn Industries had always been opaque. I'd asked questions once. Dominic had shut them down. Some things, even between husband and wife, especially between husband and wife, remain unspoken. What kind of information? The kind that would end me. He stopped pacing, looked at me directly. Those steel blue eyes that had once made me feel seen. Fraud allegations. Statute of limitations has passed, but the reputational damage. The board would remove me. The investors would sue. Maya's trust would be frozen in litigation for a decade. Maya. Our daughter's name in his mouth. Weapon and wound. What is Marcus asking for? $200 million. Buyout. Or he goes public next week. 200 million. I processed the number. Dominic had the liquidity, barely, but it would leave the company vulnerable, a wound that might never heal. There are legal options, I said carefully. Cease and desist. Defamation countersuit if his claims are false. We can... His claims aren't false. There it was. The confession I hadn't asked for. The truth I was now legally bound to protect. Dominic, I need options, Natalie. He moved toward the table, closer than professional distance. All of them, including ones that make the problem disappear. Disappear. The word hung in the climate-controlled air. Precise. Chosen. What do you mean, disappear? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I watched his hands again. Still steady, still calm. The hands of a man who has already made his decision and is waiting for someone to talk him out of it, or confirm there's no other way. I'll find another way, I said. The words came automatically. The attorney's promise, the ex-wife's desperate hope. He nodded once, collected his coat from the chair. As he moved toward the door, his jacket shifted, and I saw it, the outline, Subtle. But I know Dominic's body better than I know my own. The way fabric drapes across his frame. The way weight redistributes. There was something in his inner pocket. Something heavy. Something that didn't belong. He left without goodbye. He always does. I sat in the empty conference room for a long time. The October light shifted from gold to gray. The clock on the wall ticked toward a deadline I didn't yet know. I replayed his words, his silences. The way he'd said, disappear. Not like a question, but like a test. He wanted me to stop him. Or he wanted me to confirm he was right. And I was bound by the very law I'd sworn to uphold to say, nothing. 24 hours later. The Vaughan Industries Tower. I told myself I was there for documents, a file I'd left during a meeting months ago, routine retrieval, professional necessity. I was there because I needed to know if what I'd seen in that conference room was real. The 47th floor still felt like walking into my past. I'd been here 1,000 times during the marriage. Dinner deliveries when Dominic worked late, impromptu celebrations when deals closed. Maya's drawings taped to his office door before she learned that CEOs don't decorate like kindergarten teachers. The drawings are gone now. The door is just a door. Miss Cross. His assistant recognized me. Of course she did. I'm still in the system. Still listed as his attorney. Still connected to him in ways that divorce paperwork couldn't sever. Is Dominic in? He stepped out for a call. Should be back in 10 minutes. She smiled. Professional. Neutral. You can wait in his office if you'd like. 10 minutes alone in his office. 10 minutes to confirm or deny. Thank you. The corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows on two sides. Manhattan sprawled beneath like a kingdom he'd built from nothing. The desk was mahogany, darker than mine, older. Inherited from a mentor who'd believed in him before anyone else did. I didn't look at the view. I looked at the desk. The drawer was on the right side, second from top. I'd seen his hand drift toward it during our meeting. Unconscious. Protective. I moved around the desk. My heart was loud in my ears. The professional veneer, the attorney who reviews evidence, who gathers facts, who doesn't act on assumption, that veneer was cracking. I opened the drawer. Wood on wood, the same sound from the hook flash cut. There it was. Matte black. Semi-automatic. The kind of weapon that doesn't ask questions. The kind that ends them. I reached in, not to take it, just to confirm, and felt the weight. Loaded. I could tell by the balance. He wasn't bluffing. He wasn't processing. He was preparing. I closed the drawer, moved back around the desk, sat in the visitor's chair like I'd been waiting all along. Dominic entered, saw me. His expression flickered, just for an instant, with something I couldn't read. Calculation? Relief? Fear that I'd seen exactly what I'd seen? You didn't mention you were stopping by. I left a file. My voice was steady. 14 years of courtroom training. Months ago, the Peterson matter. He studied me, those steel blue eyes that miss nothing. I'll have Patricia find it. Thank you. I stood, collected my bag, walked toward the door with steps that felt like performance. Natalie. I stopped. Didn't turn. Whatever you're thinking, his voice was quiet now, almost soft. I need you to trust me. Trust. The word from a man with a loaded gun in his desk drawer. The word from a man who'd asked me to find ways to make a problem disappear. I'll be in touch about the Peterson file. I left without looking back. Took the elevator down 47 floors with my hands shaking inside my coat pockets. In my car, I called a number I shouldn't have had. A contact from a case 3 years ago. A detective who owed me nothing but might answer anyway. Shaw. Detective Shaw? This is Natalie Cross. We met on the Hendricks case. Counselor. His voice was neutral, wary. Detectives don't love defense attorneys. What can I do for you? I chose my words carefully, hypothetically, professionally. The dance of asking without telling. I understand you're investigating an incident involving Marcus Chen, a vehicle accident last week. Silence on the line. Then, how do you know about that? Legal circles. I wasn't lying, exactly. I may have information, hypothetically. What would you need to pursue a case? Hypothetically? He laughed, short, humorless. Evidence, a witness who saw something that isn't speculation or gut feeling. Why? What have you got? What did I have? A privileged conversation I couldn't repeat. A gun I couldn't prove intent for. A feeling, bone-deep certainty, that meant nothing in court. Nothing yet. My voice was barely audible. I'll call if that changes. I sat in my car for a long time. The Manhattan traffic moved around me, lives continuing, routines unbroken. And I sat with knowledge that I couldn't share, couldn't use, couldn't ignore. The law I'd dedicated my life to was now a prison. The privilege meant to protect clients was protecting a murder plan. And I was locked inside with the truth, watching the clock tick towards something I couldn't stop. 72 hours. That's how long I had. I just didn't know it yet. If I couldn't stop Dominic, maybe I could stop the reason. The restaurant was neutral ground, a place in Tribeca where power lunches happened and no one remembered faces. White tablecloths, burgundy leather, the kind of establishment where a conversation about blackmail wouldn't seem out of place. Marcus Chen was already seated when I arrived. I hadn't seen him in years, not since the divorce, when the social architecture of marriage collapsed and took mutual friends with it. He'd aged poorly, or perhaps that was just my perception, colored by what I knew he was doing to Dominic. 45 years old, round face softening toward jowls, hair that had been black, now shot through with gray, thinning at the crown in a way he tried to hide and couldn't. His suit was expensive but ill-fitting, bought when he was thinner, now straining at the buttons. A man who'd let things go. But his eyes were sharp, calculating. The eyes of someone who believed he was owed something and intended to collect. Natalie Cross. He smiled without warmth. I didn't expect to hear from you. I thought we were on different sides now. We were always on different sides, Marcus. I sat across from him, kept my hands flat on the tablecloth, professional, contained. I'm here because I think we can avoid something neither of us wants. And what's that? I chose my words like a surgeon choosing instruments, each one precise, each one necessary. Dominic is under pressure, the kind that makes people reactive. I'm concerned that this situation is escalating beyond what anyone intended. Marcus laughed, short, sharp, humorless. The laugh of a man who's stopped pretending. Beyond what anyone intended? He leaned forward, too close. The aggressive body language of someone who thinks he has the upper hand. I intended exactly this. 15 years ago, your husband, your ex-husband, squeezed me out of the company we built together. Together, Natalie. I was there at the beginning. Before the towers and the board seats and the Forbes profiles, I was there. I know your history. Then you know what he did. Marcus's voice tightened.
The wound beneath the bravado. He diluted my equity when the company was worth nothing. Convinced me to sign papers I didn't understand. By the time we were worth billions, I had pennies. And he had everything. I'd heard versions of this story before. Dominic's version, where Marcus was a silent partner who'd contributed capital but not vision. Marcus's version, where Dominic was a thief in a tailored suit. The truth was probably somewhere between. It usually is. What would it take to end this? Marcus's smile widened. Cruel now. 200 million? He has it. He just doesn't want to give it. That's half his liquid capital. It would cripple the company. Good. The word was a knife. Let him feel what I felt. Let him lose something he can't get back. I tried a different angle, the one I'd hoped I wouldn't need. Marcus, I need you to understand something. I leaned forward slightly, made my voice very quiet. Dominic is not a man who accepts being backed into a corner. If you push him too far... What? Marcus laughed again. He'll hurt me? Let him try. He spread his hands wide, a gesture of false vulnerability. I have insurance, Natalie. Documents. Records. A file with your ex-husband's name on it that goes to 3 different journalists if anything happens to me. Anything at all.
Insurance. The dead man's switch. If Dominic killed him, the truth would come out anyway. He doesn't know about the insurance? Not yet, but he will. After the conference next week, the whole world will. I sat back, processed. The conference. Next week. Public venue. Perfect cover for an accident. Or perfect stage for an announcement that would destroy Dominic either way. Marcus? My voice was careful now, almost gentle. Whatever happened 15 years ago, is this really how you want it to end? Mutually assured destruction? He studied me for a long moment. Something flickered behind his eyes. The friend he'd once been, maybe. The man who'd built something alongside someone he trusted. Then it was gone. Your ex-husband is a fraud and a thug. The words were final. He pays, or he burns. Those are the options. He stood, left cash on the table, more than the bill, a power move. Walked away without looking back. I sat in the restaurant for another 20 minutes. The jazz piano continued, the white tablecloths gleamed. The world moved on around me. Every door was closing. Every path was blocked. I couldn't stop Dominic from doing what he planned to do. I couldn't stop Marcus from provoking it. I was standing in the middle of a collision course with no brakes on either side. Back at the office, I wasn't alone. Claire was in my doorway before I'd even taken off my coat. Claire Santos, 35, my partner at the firm, the one I'd brought in 3 years ago because her precision matched my own. Dark hair in a perfect bob, eyes that missed nothing. The kind of lawyer who believed in the system with a faith I'd started to lose. Where were you? Her voice was carefully neutral. You missed the Morrison call. Personal matter. I moved past her, toward my desk, toward the files I didn't want her to see. Too late. Her eyes had already found it. The file on my desk. The one I'd left out like an amateur because my mind was 15 places at once. Vaughn, Dominic R. Natalie. Claire's voice changed, concern replacing neutrality. Why is your ex-husband's file on your desk? Routine consultation. The lie came easily, too easily. You've been distracted for days, missing meetings, Coming in early, leaving late? She stepped into the office, closer. Something's wrong. I should have told her. Should have trusted the partner I'd chosen, the system we both believed in. Should have handed her the impossible weight I was carrying. But Claire believed in rules, in lines that couldn't be crossed, in principles that mattered more than people. If I told her what I knew, what I suspected, she would report it. She'd have to. It's who she is. And I wasn't ready to destroy Dominic's life to save it. Not yet.
It's nothing. I met her eyes, held them.
Personal history bleeding into professional matters. I'm handling it. She studied me for a long moment, the way she studies hostile witnesses, looking for the crack in the story. I don't know if she believed me. I don't think she did. But she nodded, stepped back. The Morrison file is on your desk. He needs an answer by Thursday. He'll have one. She left. The door stayed open, a small assertion of surveillance. She'd be watching now, waiting for me to make a mistake. I closed the Vaughn file, locked it in my desk drawer, sat in my chair as the October light shifted toward evening. 2 days. That's what I had. 2 days until the conference where Marcus would destroy Dominic, or Dominic would destroy Marcus. And I was standing alone in the middle, watching both of them walk toward a cliff. Late that night, after Claire left, after the building emptied, after the janitor's vacuum had come and gone, I stayed. The Harrington file was still open on my desk, a convenient prop if anyone walked by. But my screen showed something else. Marcus Chen's public calendar. Industry events, speaking engagements. The digital footprints of a man who didn't know someone was tracking his movements. And there it was. October 17th, 3 days from now. The Global Finance Forum. Marcus Chen, keynote speaker. The future of private equity transparency. Transparency. The word was almost funny. A man planning to expose fraud at a transparency conference. The universe has a cruel sense of irony. Public venue. 3,000 attendees. Media coverage. Security that would be focused on VIP access, not on accidents. Perfect cover. I pulled up the venue layout, the parking structure, the exit routes, the places where a man might have an unfortunate fall, or a medical emergency no one saw coming, or a confrontation that escalated beyond anyone's control. I was thinking like him now, mapping the terrain like a tactician, looking for the places where a murder could hide. I closed the laptop, sat in the darkness of my office with only the city lights for company. October 17th, 72 hours. That was the deadline I hadn't known I was counting toward. I reached for my phone before I could talk myself out of it. Natalie? His voice was alert, awake. He wasn't sleeping either. We need to talk. Tonight. I'll be here. The house. The house that used to be ours. I hadn't been back since the divorce was finalized. 5 years of consciously avoiding the address, taking different routes, pretending that a building couldn't hold ghosts. It held them anyway. The brick was the same, the garden that Dominic pretended to care about and I actually tended, overgrown now, the roses wild. Maya's swing set visible in the backyard, probably rusted. The window of the room where I'd nursed her through fevers and read her stories and promised her a family that would stay whole. Promises are fragile things. They break easier than glass. Dominic stood in the doorway. No suit now, just a white shirt, untucked, sleeves rolled up. The version of him I used to know before the armor went on. The version I'd married. He looked tired, older than 42. The weight of what he was planning was visible in the shadows under his eyes. "Come in." The living room was different. Fewer photographs. The furniture rearranged. Small changes that added up to a life that had moved on without me, or tried to. One photograph remained on the mantel. Maya's school portrait from last year. 12 years old, braces visible in her smile. My eyes, his cheekbones. The best parts of both of us. I made myself look away. "Scotch?" He held up a glass, offering. "I'm not here to drink." He shrugged, poured one for himself. The amber liquid caught the lamplight, warm, expensive, the kind of comfort money can buy. "You've been researching Marcus's schedule." I froze. How did he? I'm not stupid, Natalie. I know when someone's watching. And I know you. Then you know why I'm here. Silence stretched between us. The ticking of a grandfather clock I'd always hated. The hum of the house settling into night. "The conference," I said. "October 17th, 3 days." He didn't respond. "Whatever you're planning," I stepped closer, made him look at me. "Don't do it. Please. We can find another way." His expression didn't change. That marble stillness I'd learned to fear. "You don't understand what he's doing to me." "I understand that you have a loaded gun in your desk drawer." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise? Fear? The momentary crack in the armor before it sealed again. "Protection. You know the threats I receive." "Protection." I let the word hang. "Dominic, I've spent 15 years reading your tells. I know what you look like when you're lying, and I know what you look like when you've made a decision you're not going to change." He set down the glass, moved to the window, stared out at the darkness where the garden used to bloom. "He'll destroy everything, Natalie. The company, the foundation, Maya's trust." His voice was quiet now, almost broken. "Everything I've built. Everything I've tried to leave for her. Maya's father matters more than Maya's inheritance." He flinched, actually flinched. "If you do this," I pressed, "if you hurt him, Maya's father becomes a murderer. That's the inheritance. That's what she carries for the rest of her life. Is that her future?" He didn't turn around, didn't look at me, but I heard the fracture in his voice when he finally spoke. "I don't see another way." There it was, the admission. Not explicit, never explicit, not with Dominic, but as clear as any confession I'd ever heard in a courtroom. He was going to do it, unless someone stopped him. "There's always another way," I said, but I didn't believe it. And he knew I didn't believe it. He turned, looked at me with those steel blue eyes that had once made me feel safe. Now they just made me feel small. "Go home, Natalie. This isn't your fight." I left. No argument, no final plea, just the walk to the door, the cold air of October night, the car that was parked where I used to park every day. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the house where I'd lived another life. And then I broke. The tears came in silence. No sobs, no wailing. Just the steady leak of everything I'd been holding back. The fear, the grief, the impossible weight of what I knew. He was going to kill someone. My daughter's father was going to become a murderer. And I was the only person in the world who could stop him, and the only person legally forbidden from doing so. The crying lasted 3 minutes, maybe 4. Then it stopped. Stillness replaced it. The cold, clear stillness of a decision made. I couldn't stop him through the law. I couldn't reason with Marcus. I couldn't ask Claire for help. I couldn't tell Detective Shaw what I knew. But there was one thing I could do. One thing that would stop him. One thing that would save him from life in prison or death row. One thing that would cost me everything I'd built. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through contacts I hadn't touched in years, names from a past life, judges I'd appeared before, prosecutors I'd battled, colleagues who'd become strangers. And there, the name I needed. Aldridge, V. Judge. Victor Aldridge, the federal judge who'd overseen Dominic's parole 8 years ago, after the assault conviction that nearly ended his career. The judge who'd believed in second chances. The judge who still had authority to review Dominic's parole status, if someone gave him reason to. I started typing. I need to discuss a parole matter, urgent, tomorrow if possible. My thumb hovered over the send button. The screen light illuminated my face in the darkness. The wedding ring on my right hand caught the glow. Still present, still warm. Still evidence of everything I was about to betray. In 3 years, Maya would be 15. Old enough to ask questions. Old enough to understand that her mother sent her father to prison. Old enough to hate me for it. In 3 days, without intervention, Dominic would be a murderer. Maya would visit him in maximum security for the rest of her life, if she visited at all. 3 years of prison, or a lifetime of worse. It wasn't a choice. It was math. I pressed send. The message went. The screen returned to darkness. The night continued, unchanged, as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. In pressing that button, I'd stopped being his attorney. I'd become his judge. I'd chosen his fate without his consent, and I would spend the rest of my life wondering if I'd saved him, or just proved that I couldn't let go. The moment I pressed send, I stopped being his attorney. I became his judge. The only question was whether he'd ever understand why. 2 a.m. The city sleeps. I don't. My office had become a bunker. Coffee cups multiplied on the desk like evidence of siege warfare. The Harrington file sat untouched where I'd left it, that simple embezzlement case from another lifetime, when I still believed in clean solutions. Judge Aldridge had replied within an hour. Tomorrow, my chambers, 8 a.m. Bring whatever you're not telling me in writing. Now I needed the weapon. Dominic's case history. 8 years of legal records reduced to folders and filings. The assault conviction that nearly ended his career. The 18 months he'd served. The parole conditions that were supposed to ensure he'd never become what his father had been. I'd defended him during that case, before the divorce, before I learned to be afraid of what he might become. I'd stood in court and argued that Dominic Vaughn was not a violent man, that the incident was isolated, provoked, unlikely to recur. The judge had believed me. I'd believed myself. Funny how certainty crumbles when you're the one who has to watch it proved wrong. I spread the parole documents across my desk, condition by condition, requirement by requirement, looking for the gap, the error, the technicality that would give me standing to bring this before Aldridge without revealing what I actually knew. Mandatory check-ins with parole officer. Completed. Documented. Travel restrictions for first 6 months. Followed. Signed off. Random drug testing. All negative. Clean record. Employment verification. Vaughn Industries established as primary employer. Approved. Anger management certification. Mandatory completion within 12 months of release. I stared at the line. Read it again. The completion form. The documentation proving he'd finished the court-ordered program. I flipped through the file. Once, twice, 3 times with increasing desperation.
It wasn't there. The certification was missing. Not expired. Never filed. 8 years of a technicality sitting in a folder, waiting for someone desperate enough to find it. I pulled up the court database on my laptop, searched Dominic's case number, navigated to parole compliance records. There it was. The gap in the system. Anger management certification. Status pending. 8 years pending. A paper error that no one had caught because Dominic had been a model parolee in every other respect. A bureaucratic oversight that had closed his file in practice while leaving it technically open in the system. This was how I would save him. This was how I would destroy myself. I sat back, looked at the ceiling. The weight of what I was about to do pressed down like something physical. A technicality. 3 years of his life hanging on a missing form. 3 years in prison for a paperwork error that had nothing to do with what he was planning. But it was legal. It was within the rules. It was a path that didn't require me to say the words murder or gun or Marcus Chen to a judge I was already deceiving. The law I'd spent my life serving was about to become a weapon. And I was about to prove that weapons don't care about intent, only about what they can destroy. I began drafting the request for emergency parole review. Your Honor, I write to request immediate review of parole status for Dominic Robert Vaughn, federal case number 2016-CR4471. Recent evidence has come to my attention suggesting non-compliance with mandatory parole conditions, specifically the anger management certification required under Condition 7.3. My hand stopped. What would Maya think someday when she was old enough to read this document? When she understood that her mother had sent her father to prison on a technicality? Would she see a woman trying to save a man from himself? Or would she see what Dominic would see? A woman who couldn't let go of control, even when control required destruction. I kept writing. The words came clean and precise. Lawyer words, stripped of emotion, designed to accomplish a task. By 4 a.m., the request was complete, printed, signed. I looked at my hand holding the pen. The wedding ring caught the desk lamp's amber glow, the same ring that had caught the light in the hook, in the car, at every moment of decision. It was still there, still on the wrong hand, still present. Tomorrow I would use that hand to sign documents that would end Dominic's freedom, and I would do it wearing his ring. Some contradictions can't be resolved. They can only be carried. I hadn't slept. Claire noticed immediately. She stood in my doorway at 8:15 a.m., early, even for her. The precision bob was immaculate, the emerald dress pressed, the evaluating eyes already cataloging everything, the coffee cups, the scattered files, the dark circles under my eyes. And on my desk, exposed like evidence I'd failed to conceal, the Vaughn parole file. Natalie? Her voice was careful, the voice she uses with hostile witnesses. You didn't go home last night? Working late. I didn't look up. Couldn't afford to let her see my face. On what? The silence stretched. I could feel her crossing the threshold, literally crossing it, entering the office she usually observed from the doorway. The click of her heels on hardwood approaching the desk. She saw the file before I could cover it. What are you doing? I looked up then, met her eyes. Claire Santos, 35 years old, the partner I'd chosen because her precision matched my own. The woman who believed in the system, with a faith I'd started losing the moment I saw the gun in Dominic's drawer. What I have to do. She picked up the parole document, read the header. Her eyebrows, those bold eyebrows that telegraphed everything, drew together. This is dated today. You're filing for emergency review of your ex-husband's parole status. Yes.
On a technicality from 8 years ago. Yes. Claire set down the document, slowly, deliberately, like someone placing evidence in a murder trial. You're going to violate privilege. It wasn't a question. For him, after everything he did to you, he's going to kill someone, Claire. Her face shifted, the professional mask cracking just enough to show the horror beneath. In 72 hours, I continued. Less now. He has a plan, a timeline, a target, and I am the only person who knows because he told me under privilege. Then you can't. I can't repeat what he said, I know. I stood, faced her across the desk. But I can bring forward a parole violation that's been sitting in the system for 8 years. I can testify to behavioral patterns I've observed. I can give a judge enough reason to remand him to custody while the review is processed. That's, Claire's voice caught. That's using the law as a weapon. That's exactly what privilege is supposed to prevent. Privilege is supposed to protect clients from having their confessions used against them in court. It's not supposed to protect murder plans. You don't know it's a murder plan. You're inferring, you're assuming. I've seen the gun, Claire. I've heard him say he doesn't see another way. She stared at me. The war on her face was visible. The attorney who worshipped rules, fighting with the human who understood that some situations break the rules. There's a third option. Her voice was quiet now. You do nothing. You let him make his own choice. And if he chooses murder, then that's his responsibility, his consequence, his soul. And Maya? His daughter, my daughter. She grows up with a murderer for a father. Or, I spread my hands, she grows up with a father who spent 3 years in prison because his ex-wife loved him enough to stop him. Those are the options, Claire. 3 years of prison, or a lifetime of worse. Silence filled the office. The morning light through the window was gold, the same gold as the October day when Dominic had called and everything had started. Claire picked up her bag, adjusted the strap on her shoulder. The gesture was slow, final. If you do this, she said, the bar will destroy you. They'll revoke your license. Everything you've built, this firm, your reputation, your career, it ends. I know. And I told you I'd report you if you went through with this. I know. She met my eyes. In her gaze, I saw something worse than anger. I saw disappointment. I saw the death of respect. You didn't give me a choice, Natalie. You pulled me into your moral compromise without asking whether I wanted to carry it. Claire, I believed in you. Her voice cracked, just slightly, the precision faltering. I believed you were different, that you understood that principles matter more than whatever this is. Would you have done the same? If someone you loved was walking toward a cliff, would you let them jump to prove you respected their autonomy? I don't know the answer. I'm not sure there is one. Claire walked to the door, paused at the threshold. I'll give you until the hearing. She didn't turn around. If you testify, if you actually do this, I'll file the ethics complaint myself. The door closed behind her. I stood in the empty office. The morning light still gold, the files still scattered, the path still clear, and Claire's footsteps fading down the hall. The sound of a partnership ending. I picked up the parole request, read it once more. Then I gathered my things and left for the courthouse. The call came as I was leaving for the courthouse. "Ms. Cross?" A voice I didn't recognize. Careful. Official. "This is Detective Raymond Shaw, NYPD Homicide." I stopped in the lobby of my building. The morning crowd flowed around me, suits and briefcases, lives moving forward while mine suspended. "Detective?" My voice found its professional register automatically. "How can I help you?" "Quick question. Where was your ex-husband the night of the 14th? The 14th? Marcus Chen's accident. The near miss that had started Shaw's investigation. "I wouldn't know," I said. "We're divorced." "Mm-hmm." He didn't sound convinced. "Funny thing is, Ms. Cross, his name keeps coming up. Traffic cameras caught a car matching his plates near the Chen residence that evening. And when I started pulling threads..." "What kind of threads?" "The kind that lead to interesting places." His voice was pleasant, conversational, the voice of a man who knows more than he's saying. "You know Mr. Chen filed an incident report, right? Said someone tampered with his vehicle. Couldn't prove it, but he had suspicions." My mind raced. Shaw was investigating the near miss, the first attempt that hadn't worked. He was already looking at Dominic, not for what he was planning, but for what he'd already tried. If Shaw built a case first, Dominic faced murder charges. Not 3 years for parole violation. Life. Or death row. "Detective," I said carefully, "if you're asking me to confirm my ex-husband's whereabouts, I can't help you. We don't maintain that kind of contact." "But you are his attorney, aren't you?" "I've represented him in various legal matters, yes." "So if he were, say, planning something that might interest me, you'd have to keep that to yourself. Attorney-client privilege and all that." Silence on the line. He was testing me, probing, seeing how I'd react to the pressure. "I'm not aware of anything that would be relevant to your investigation, Detective." "Uh-huh. Well, if you think of anything at all, my number's in your call history now." I stood on the sidewalk outside my building. Manhattan morning traffic surged past. The sun was bright, almost aggressive, the kind of clarity that makes everything look too sharp. Shaw wasn't guessing. He had evidence. Traffic cameras. Chen's incident report. The web was already forming around Dominic, and I was standing at the edge of it. If I did nothing, if I let events unfold, Shaw might arrest Dominic for attempted murder before the conference even happened. Problem solved. My hands clean, my license intact. But attempted murder wasn't enough to stop what came next. Dominic would make bail. He had resources. He had lawyers. He'd be free within 48 hours, and angrier than before. And Marcus Chen would still be giving that keynote speech, still be exposed, still be vulnerable. Shaw's investigation might delay the timeline. It wouldn't prevent the outcome. The only way to truly stop Dominic was to take him off the board entirely. 3 years of federal custody, no bail, no freedom, no opportunity to finish what he'd started. Would you have done the same? Known what I knew? Seen what I'd seen? Would you have trusted the system to catch him in time? Or would you have taken control, even knowing the cost? I looked at my phone. Shaw's number in my call history now. A lifeline I couldn't use without becoming an accessory. The courthouse was 6 blocks away. Judge Aldridge was expecting me at 8 a.m. 48 hours. That's what I had left. Shaw was circling. Claire was watching. The conference was approaching. And I was about to walk into chambers and convince a federal judge to imprison a man on a technicality, without telling him why it mattered. I started walking. Detective squad room, phones, keyboards, low chatter. Across the city, Detective Raymond Shaw stood before a case board. Photographs pinned in clusters. Marcus Chen's car, the brake lines, traffic camera stills, a black sedan matching Vaughn's plates. Financial records, transfers between Vaughn Industries and offshore accounts. And at the center, Dominic Vaughn's photograph, eyes that gave nothing away. Shaw studied the board. 50 years old, salt and pepper buzz cut, the permanent squint of a man who'd seen too much and believed too little. "What are you planning, Mr. Vaughn?" he murmured to the photograph. "And who's going to stop you first, me or her?" He picked up a new photograph, added it to the periphery of the board. Natalie Cross, official Bar Association headshot, professional smile, hazel eyes that looked, in the harsh squad room light, like they were hiding something. Shaw wasn't sure yet, but he had instincts, and his instincts said the ex-wife knew more than she was telling. Judge Victor Aldridge's chambers smelled like old books and older decisions. Mahogany shelves lined the walls, law texts, case histories, the accumulated weight of a career spent determining other people's fates. A bronze scale of justice sat on his desk, tarnished with age, tilted slightly to one side. Whether by design or accident, I never learned. The judge himself sat behind the desk like a monument, 58 years old, silver hair, the patient eyes of a man who had heard every lie the law profession could invent, and had learned to wait for the truth beneath. He didn't stand when I entered, didn't offer pleasantries, just gestured to the chair across from him and waited. "Miss Cross." His voice was even, neutral. "Your message was cryptic. Urgent parole matter. No details, no case number until this morning. That's not your usual style." "No, Your Honor, it's not." I placed the file on his desk. The parole documents, the missing certification, the request for emergency review. He opened it without hurry, read with the deliberate pace of a man who bills by the hour, even when he's not billing at all. "Dominic Vaughn." He looked up. "Your ex-husband?" "Yes." "Whom you represented during the original assault case?" "Yes." "Whom you currently represent in various business matters?" "Yes." Aldridge set down the file, steepled his fingers, the pose of evaluation. "This is 8 years old, Miss Cross. An unclosed anger management certification that no one noticed because Mr. Vaughn has been, by all accounts, a model citizen since his release. Why now?" This was the moment. The knife's edge between truth and privilege, between saving Dominic and destroying the sacred trust that made my profession possible. "I have reason to believe," I chose each word like a surgeon choosing where to cut, "that Mr. Vaughn is exhibiting escalating behavioral patterns consistent with the concerns that led to his original conviction." "Behavioral patterns." Aldridge's voice was flat. "Such as?" "Increased aggression in professional contexts. Statements suggesting difficulty managing anger in high-pressure situations. A general escalation that I've observed in recent weeks." "You've observed." He wasn't buying it, not entirely. "In your capacity as his attorney?" "In my capacity as someone who knows him, has known him for 15 years. "And as the mother of his child?" I met his eyes, held them, let him see whatever truth he could find there. "Yes." Aldridge picked up the file again, flipped through pages he'd already read, the gesture of a man buying time while he decided something. "Ms. Cross, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to understand that your answer will determine whether this hearing proceeds." I nodded. "Are you bringing this matter before me because you genuinely believe Mr. Vaughn poses a public safety risk? Or are you bringing it because you have personal knowledge of something specific, something you can't disclose, and you're using this technicality as a legal backdoor? The truth. He was asking for the truth, and I couldn't give it to him. Your Honor, my voice was steady. 14 years of courtroom training. I believe Dominic Vaughn poses a risk. I believe the anger management certification should have been completed. And I believe that reviewing his parole status now, before something happens that can't be undone, is the right thing to do. That's not an answer to my question. It's the only answer I can give. Aldridge studied me. The silence stretched. Outside, somewhere, a clock ticked. The same clock that had been ticking since I'd found the gun in Dominic's drawer. Finally, he spoke. I'll schedule the hearing. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Emergency review of parole status for Dominic Robert Vaughn. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by dread. The door was open. Now I had to walk through it. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me yet. His voice hardened. Miss Cross, whatever you're not telling me, it better be worth what you're about to lose. It is. I hope so. For your sake. He closed the file. For your daughter's sake. I stood, collected my bag, walked toward the door with the careful steps of someone leaving a minefield. Miss Cross. I stopped, didn't turn. I've known you for 12 years, watched you build a reputation for integrity. Whatever is happening here, I hope you've thought very carefully about whether you can live with the consequences. I have, Your Honor. I left without looking back. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. The countdown that had started with Dominic's phone call was almost over. 24 hours to save him. 24 hours to destroy everything else. The night before, my apartment felt smaller than usual. The walls pressed in. The silence was loud. Everywhere I looked, I saw evidence of the life I was about to burn down. The Bar Association certificate on the wall, the client files on my desk, the photographs of Maya at every age, from infant to 12. I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a glass of wine I wasn't drinking. The testimony draft spread before me, marked with revisions, each word chosen for maximum impact and minimum disclosure. I have reason to believe Mr. Vaughn poses an imminent threat, not a lie, not the whole truth either. Based on observed behavioral patterns consistent with the concerns that led to his original conviction. The words were clean, professional, the kind of language that courts accept because it sounds objective, even when it's anything but. But reading them in the silence of my apartment, with the weight of tomorrow pressing down, they felt like ashes in my mouth. The screen lit up. Maya's face appeared before I'd even consciously answered. 12 years old, dark hair falling past her shoulders, my eyes, her father's cheekbones, the braces visible when she smiled, and she wasn't smiling now. Mom? Her voice was thin, concerned. You look weird. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired. Work stuff. You always say that. Because it's usually true. Maya's face filled the screen. She was in her bedroom at Dominic's house. I recognized the purple walls, the posters of bands I pretended to understand. In the background, I could see the edge of her bookshelf, the soccer trophies, the debris field of adolescence. Dad's been weird too, she said. Like, really quiet. He had this dinner thing canceled yesterday and he just sat in his office for hours. My throat closed. Of course Dominic was quiet. He was counting down to the same deadline I was, except from the other side of it. People get stressed sometimes, Maya. Adults have complicated lives. Yeah, but... She bit her lip. The gesture she'd inherited from me, though she didn't know it. You guys are being weird at the same time. Is something happening? Is it about the divorce stuff again? How do you tell a 12-year-old that her father is planning to murder someone? That her mother is about to send him to prison to stop him? That the family she keeps hoping will somehow reassemble is about to shatter in ways that can never be fixed? It's complicated, I said. The word felt thin, inadequate. But I need you to know something, Maya. She waited. Those hazel eyes, my eyes, watching me through the screen. No matter what happens, no matter what you hear about me or your dad or anything, I love you. And everything I do to protect you. Maya's expression shifted, concern becoming fear. Mom, you're scaring me. I'm sorry, I don't mean to. I forced a smile. It felt like lifting weights with my face. I just wanted you to know. That's all. Are you sick or something? Is that what this is? No, sweetheart, I'm not sick. Then what? I'll call you tomorrow. The words came out too fast, too final. I promise, after my meeting, we'll talk, okay? Maya studied me through the phone screen. 12 years old, but old enough to sense when adults were lying. Old enough to know that we'll talk tomorrow sometimes meant something terrible is about to happen. Okay, she said quietly. I love you too, Mom. I know, sweetheart. I know. The apartment returned to silence. The testimony draft sat on the table, waiting. The wine glass remained untouched. I picked up the legal pad, read the line I'd written. I have witnessed behaviors consistent with imminent threat. Tomorrow, I would say those words under oath. I would look at Dominic, at the father of my daughter, the man I'd married, the person I'd once trusted more than anyone. And I would end his freedom with carefully chosen words. He would hate me for it. Maybe forever. Maya would have to choose sides, and she might not choose mine. And somewhere, in a prison cell, Dominic would have 3 years to wonder why his ex-wife had destroyed him, and whether it was love or control that had held the knife. Would you have done the same? If your child's father was walking toward murder, would you sacrifice everything to stop him? Or would you let him choose and live with the consequences of his choice instead of yours? I folded the testimony draft, put it in my bag for tomorrow. Then I sat in the darkness of my apartment, watching the city lights through the window, and waited for morning. 9 a.m., Courtroom 4B, Federal Building. The room smelled like old wood and new anxiety. Rows of empty benches stretched behind me. This was a closed parole review, not a public trial. Only essential personnel. The court reporter, 2 marshals by the door. Judge Aldridge at the bench, silver hair catching the overhead lights. And in the gallery, uninformed and unprepared, Dominic. He'd been summoned that morning. Emergency review, no details given. He sat with his lawyer, not me, not anymore, in the front row, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. His expression was controlled, confused, the stillness of a man who didn't yet understand what was happening. He didn't know I was the reason he was here. He was about to find out. All rise. Aldridge's gavel fell once. The proceeding began. This emergency review concerns Dominic Robert Vaughn, federal case number 2016-CR4471. The clerk's voice was flat, procedural. Matter of unclosed parole violation regarding anger management certification. I watched Dominic's face as the words registered, saw the confusion give way to something else. Calculation. Then, slowly, turning in his seat, his eyes found me. I was sitting at the witness table, not in the gallery, not as audience, as testimony. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. The court calls Natalie Cross. The walk to the stand was 20 feet. It felt like miles. I raised my right hand, swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The words tasted like copper in my mouth. Aldridge's voice was neutral, procedural, but his eyes watched me with something I couldn't read. Ms. Cross, you've brought this matter to the court's attention. Please explain your concerns. I looked at Dominic. Those steel blue eyes that had once made me feel safe. Now they were watching me with the focused attention of someone who's just realized they're in danger. Your Honor, I have reason to believe that Dominic Vaughn poses an imminent public safety threat. His parole conditions included mandatory completion of anger management certification within 12 months of release. That certification was never filed. You're aware this technical violation is 8 years old? Yes, Your Honor. And you're bringing it forward now because I've witnessed behavioral patterns in recent weeks that concern me. Statements suggesting difficulty managing anger, escalation in high-pressure situations, a general deterioration, consistent with the concerns that led to his original conviction. Objection! Dominic's lawyer stood. Ms. Cross's observations would be covered by attorney-client privilege if... I'm not testifying to privileged communications. My voice was steady, 14 years of training. I'm testifying to observed behaviors, as his ex-wife, as the mother of his child, as someone who knows him. Aldridge leaned forward. Ms. Cross, I'll ask you directly. Do you believe, based on your observations, that Mr. Vaughn poses a danger to himself or others if he remains free? I looked at Dominic. 15 years of marriage, the birth of our daughter, the slow erosion of trust, the divorce papers, the phone call 3 days ago, the gun in the drawer. Yes, Your Honor, I do. The courtroom was silent. Dominic's face had gone very still. The marble stillness I knew meant he was containing something explosive. Aldridge nodded slowly. Based on the evidence presented and the testimony of Ms. Cross, I find sufficient grounds to proceed with parole review. He picked up his gavel. Dominic Vaughn, you are remanded to federal custody pending formal hearing on the violation. Bail is denied due to flight risk and behavioral concerns. The marshals moved forward. Dominic stood slowly, too slowly, his eyes never leaving my face. They reached for his wrists, handcuffs clicked, metal on metal. The sound of freedom ending. And then he spoke. One word. Just one. You. Not a question, not an accusation, just recognition. The understanding that everything he'd thought he knew about me, about us, had just been rewritten. I said nothing. There was nothing to say. They led him toward the door. He walked with dignity, even in handcuffs, the CEO of a billion-dollar empire reduced to prisoner. Just before he reached the exit, he stopped, turned, looked at me one last time. In his eyes, I saw the death of something I'd been clinging to for 5 years. The hope that we might someday understand each other again. The possibility that the love we'd shared could survive the divorce, the distance, the damage. It couldn't survive this. The door closed behind him. The courtroom emptied. The marshals, the reporter, the lawyers,
all filtering out with the quiet efficiency of people who'd witnessed something final. And I sat at the witness table, alone, with the echo of his voice in my ears. You actually did it. Claire's voice, behind me. I hadn't known she was in the gallery. I turned. She stood in the aisle, arms crossed, watching me with an expression I couldn't name. Disappointment? Grudging respect? The horror of watching someone burn down their own life? Someone had to. My voice was hoarse. The words barely came. The bar will destroy you. I know. I told you I'd report you. I know. She stared at me, the conflict visible on her face, the lawyer who believed in rules, fighting with the human who had just watched a friend sacrifice everything. You didn't give me a choice, Natalie. No, I said. I didn't. She turned, walked away. Her heels echoed on the marble floor, click, 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 until the courtroom door closed behind her. I gathered my papers, stood, walked out of the courtroom on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. 3 years. That's what I'd given him. 3 years in federal prison. He was alive. He wasn't a murderer. And he would never, ever forgive me. Office door closing. Footsteps. That evening, my office. The city lights through the window. I stood before my bar license. 14 years of work compressed into a frame. The signature, the seal, the date I'd become Natalie Cross, Esquire, a member of a profession I was about to be expelled from. My hand moved before I'd consciously decided, lifted the frame from its nail. The wall beneath was slightly discolored, a rectangle of paint protected from years of sunlight, preserved exactly as it had been on the day I'd hung this symbol of everything I'd worked for. I placed the license in a cardboard box, face up, visible. I wanted to see it while I could still call it mine. I turned. The screen lit up in the darkness. Maya calling. The same call, the same face that had filled my video screen last night, asking if I was okay, not knowing that her mother was about to destroy her father's freedom. I couldn't answer. Not yet. Not until I knew what words existed for what I'd done. The phone buzzed again. Again. Then went dark. Voicemail. Another message I wouldn't be able to listen to. I walked to the window, looked out at Manhattan. The same view I'd seen 1,000 times, now strange, as if the city itself had recognized that I no longer belonged to it. Claire's name on my laptop screen, subject line, effective immediately. I opened it without sitting down. Natalie, I can't be part of this firm while you're running it. What you did today wasn't justice. It was control. You decided another person's fate because you couldn't accept that you might be wrong. I'm resigning effective immediately. My clients will be transferred per the partnership agreement. I'll be filing the ethics complaint in the morning. Claire. Partnership agreement. Ethics complaint. The language of dissolution, written by someone who'd once called me mentor. I closed the laptop, poured a drink from the bottle I kept for celebrating victories. Tonight, it was for something else. The city lights sparkled. Indifferent. Somewhere in a federal facility, Dominic was being processed, photographed, fingerprinted, stripped of the suit that signified his power. Somewhere, Maya was wondering why her mother hadn't answered the phone. And here I sat, alone, in the dark, wondering if what I'd done was love or control. Would you know the difference? If you saved someone by destroying their trust, if you protected them by taking their choice, would you be able to tell yourself it was love? Or would you always suspect, in the quiet hours, that you just proved you couldn't let go? Private number, I answered without thinking.
Ms. Cross? A voice I recognized now. Shaw. Congratulations on your morning. I understand your ex-husband had quite a day.
Detective, it's late.
Just a quick follow-up. Interesting timing, that parole hearing. We were about to bring him in ourselves for questioning in the Marcus Chen investigation. Silence. I'm curious, Shaw continued, his voice conversational, almost friendly. Did you know what we were looking at? Or was this just coincidence?
I don't know what you're talking about, Detective.
Well, Mr. Vaughn isn't going anywhere now, is he? Thanks for making our job easier.
Is there a question in there, Detective?
Not yet. His voice hardened just slightly. But I'm a patient man, Miss Cross. And patient men tend to find what they're looking for. Eventually.
I set the phone down, stared at it in the darkness. Shaw knew, or suspected. He understood that my timing wasn't coincidence, that the parole hearing had happened exactly when it needed to happen to stop whatever Dominic was planning. The prison had saved Dominic from Shaw's murder investigation. 3 years in federal custody meant no access to Marcus, no opportunity to complete what he'd started. But it wouldn't protect me. If Shaw kept digging, if he found the gun in the drawer, the financial records, the evidence of the first attempt, he'd eventually trace the timeline back to me, to the privileged conversation I couldn't admit to the knowledge I wasn't supposed to have. I picked up the photograph from my desk, the one I'd turned face down on the night this all started. Natalie, Dominic, Maya. 3 faces from another lifetime, smiling at a camera that didn't know the future. I looked at it, really looked. Maya's braces, Dominic's arm around my shoulder, my hand on his chest, the wedding ring visible. We'd been happy once, before I saw what he could become, before I became what I'd become to stop him. I turned the photograph face down again, placed it back on the desk. Some things can only be looked at for so long before they start to look back. I thought the hard part was sending him to prison. I was wrong. The hard part was waiting for him to understand why, and knowing he might never ask. 2 weeks. That's how long it took him to figure it out. I wasn't there, of course. I'm reconstructing this from fragments, Claire's account, the visitor logs, the expression on Dominic's face when he finally understood. But I've known him for 15 years. I know how his mind works. The calculation, the arithmetic of betrayal. Federal Correctional Institution, Otisville. Minimum security. The kind of prison where white-collar criminals serve time in relative comfort. No violence, no gangs, just the slow erosion of days that look exactly like each other. Dominic sat in his cell, 8 by 10 feet, concrete walls painted beige, a window too small to escape through but large enough to remind him what freedom looked like. He'd been thinking. That's what he does. That's what he's always done. While other men might rage or despair, Dominic calculates. The parole violation was 8 years old, ancient history, a technicality that no one had noticed because no one had been looking. Someone had been looking now. Someone with access to his old files. Someone who knew about Marcus Chen. Someone who understood that the timing mattered, that the conference was 3 days away, that the window was closing. Someone who knew him well enough to know what he was planning, and who cared enough, or controlled enough, to stop it. He requested his visitor log. The names were few. His lawyer, a board member from Vaughn Industries, managing the crisis in his absence.
His sister once, with Maya in tow. And Claire Santos. Natalie hadn't visited. Not once. The woman who'd sent him here couldn't bring herself to face what she'd done. But Claire had come. And Dominic, in his cell, staring at that name on the log, understood that Claire was the answer, the witness, the proof. The visiting room. Plastic chairs bolted to the floor, a table between them. No glass partition for minimum security. They could almost pretend this was a conference room, if you ignored the guard by the door. Claire entered slowly, uncertain. She hadn't expected his summons. "You came to my trial," Dominic said. Not a question. Claire nodded. "You sat in the gallery, watched your partner testify against me. She's not my partner anymore, but you know why she did it." His voice was flat, measured, the voice of a man holding something explosive very carefully. "Don't you?" Claire's silence was its own answer. She knew about Marcus. Dominic leaned forward, those steel blue eyes that had built an empire now boring into Claire like drills. "She knew what I was planning, and she used a paperwork error from 8 years ago to put me in a cage. Claire's voice faltered. "She believed you posed a danger." "To who?" "To Marcus Chen, to yourself, to my choices." The word was acid. "She didn't save me, Claire. She decided for me, like I was a child who couldn't be trusted with my own future." "Would you have trusted him? A man with a gun in his drawer and murder in his eyes? Would you have stepped back and said, 'It's his choice to make'?" "She gave up everything," Claire said. "Her career, the firm, maybe her daughter." "That was her choice." Dominic's hand slammed flat on the table, the first break in his control. The guard shifted but didn't approach. "She made her choice. She didn't give me one." "She stopped you from..." "From what?" His voice dropped. Dangerous now. "From maybe doing something I would have regretted? From maybe walking away at the last second? From maybe finding another way if I'd just had time?" Claire had no answer. Because there was no answer. The conditional tense is a prison of its own, a place where every possible future exists simultaneously, and none of them can be proven. Maybe Dominic would have killed Marcus Chen. Maybe he would have put the gun down at the last moment. Maybe he would have found another path if Natalie hadn't burned every bridge to stop him. We'll never know. That's what she took from him. The chance to find out who he really was. Claire left. Dominic remained. And somewhere in that visiting room, staring at the empty chair across from him, Dominic Vaughn felt something crystallize. Not gratitude for being saved, not even pure rage. Something colder than rage. Something that looked at 15 years of marriage and 5 years of divorce and saw, for the first time, the shape of the woman he'd never truly known. She'd loved him enough to destroy him. Or controlled him enough to call it love. He didn't know the difference anymore. Neither did she. The State Bar Association hearing room. 3rd floor of a building I'd walked past 1,000 times and never entered. Institutional carpet, fluorescent lights, the architecture of professional death. I sat at the respondents' table, alone. No co-counsel, no character witnesses. Just me and a leather folder containing 14 years of work about to be erased. The panel consisted of 3 attorneys, 2 men, 1 woman. Faces I didn't recognize. They'd been selected specifically because they had no connection to me. No history, no bias, no memory of the reputation I'd spent my career building. To them, I was case. Number 2024-ETH-0847. A name on a complaint. A set of charges. Violation of attorney-client privilege. breach of ethical conduct, betrayal of sacred trust. The words were clinical. They didn't capture the gun in the drawer, the deadline, the impossible math of 3 years versus life. They reduced everything to transgression and consequence. The state calls Claire Santos. Claire walked to the witness table. She wore charcoal, not her usual emerald. Professional mourning, perhaps, or just the color of what this proceeding required. She didn't look at me. Would you have testified if the woman who'd been your mentor, your partner, your professional model had asked you to lie for her, or at least stay silent? Would you have done it? Claire believed in rules. That's why I'd chosen her. That's what destroyed us. Ms. Santos, the panel chair's voice was neutral. You were Ms. Cross's law partner at the time of the alleged violation? Yes. Please describe what you witnessed. Claire's hands folded on the table. The lipstick she always wore was slightly wrong, applied in a hurry or a trembling hand. She told me, Claire paused, swallowed. She told me she knew her client was planning to harm someone, that she had 72 hours, that she was going to testify against him using a parole technicality to prevent it. Did she identify the nature of the harm? She implied that it was serious, life-threatening. And you advised her that this would constitute a privilege violation? Yes. What was her response? Claire's voice, when it came, was barely audible. She said she couldn't watch him destroy himself. She said her daughter, their daughter, couldn't grow up with a murderer for a father. Silence in the hearing room. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere, a radiator clicked. And then? And then she did it anyway. I sat very still. The folder in front of me contained documents, evidence, character references, mitigating circumstances. I hadn't opened it. There was nothing inside that could change what was happening. Ms. Cross, the panel chair turned to me. Do you have anything to say in your defense? I stood. The room felt larger than it was. The distance between my table and the panel stretched like judgment itself. I believed my client posed an imminent danger to himself and others. I acted to prevent irreversible harm. I cannot disclose the specifics. They remain privileged even now. But I would do it again. Silence. You understand that your testimony may constitute additional ethical violations? I understand. The panel conferred. Whispers I couldn't hear. Papers shuffled. The radiator clicked again. This panel finds sufficient evidence of ethical violation under Section 1.6 of the Rules of Professional Conduct. Pending formal review, you are hereby disbarred, effective immediately. The words landed like stones. Disbarred, effective immediately. 14 years of cases, 300 clients. The reputation I'd built one verdict at a time. Gone. I reached for my lapel. The bar pin, small, gold, the credential I'd worn every court appearance for over a decade. My fingers found it, removed it. I set it on the table in front of me. A surrender, a ritual. The last piece of Natalie Cross, Esquire, placed down like a white flag. I gathered my folder, walked toward the door, didn't look back. Claire's voice caught me at the threshold. Natalie. I stopped, didn't turn. Whatever she was going to say, she didn't. The door closed behind me. The corridor outside was empty, gray light through high windows, the sound of my heels echoing like punctuation. I cried, once, in the stairwell, then stopped, wiped my face, continued down. The bar pin was still on the table upstairs. I didn't go back for it. 3 days after the hearing, my apartment. Maya stood in the doorway with Dominic's lawyer behind her, a neutral party for the custody adjustment, legal language for a 12-year-old choosing to leave. She looked older than I remembered. 3 weeks can do that. 3 weeks of processing that your mother sent your father to prison. 3 weeks of stories she'd been told, true ones, false ones that fell somewhere in between. Come in. My voice was carefully neutral, professional, the only register I had left. The lawyer waited in the hallway. Maya entered slowly. Her backpack, covered in pins and patches I didn't recognize, sat heavy on her shoulders. The friendship bracelets were gone from her wrist. She didn't sit. "Mom?" Her voice was cold, but chill I'd never heard before. "I need to talk to you about what happened." "I know." I stayed near the kitchen island, distance she seemed to want. "What would you like to know?" "Why did you do it?" The question. The one I'd been rehearsing answers to for weeks. The one that had no good answer, only true ones that a 12-year-old couldn't hear. "There are things I can't tell you, Maya. Things that are legally, she laughed, harsh, too old for her face. "Everything with you is legal. Rules and cases and privilege and Dad's in prison, Mom, because of you. He's in prison because of choices he made, choices you decided were wrong." Would you have told her? The truth? That her father was planning to kill a man? That you'd seen the gun? That you'd heard him say he didn't see another way? Would you have burdened a 12-year-old with that knowledge to win an argument? "Everything I did," I said carefully, "I did to protect." "Protect who?" Maya's voice cracked, the child beneath the anger showing through. "Dad is gone because of you. He's in a cell because you testified against him, and now you're disbarred and—" "I know what I am." "Do you?" She stepped closer, accusatory now. "You always do this. You decide things, you control everything, and then you call it love." The words hit like blades. Because I'd heard them before. Different voice, same meaning. She didn't save me. She decided for me. Dominic's fury, coming from Maya's mouth. "I love you," I said. The words came out thin, inadequate. "I love your father. Everything I did, if you loved him, you would have trusted him." Maya's chin trembled. 12 years old, fighting tears. "You would have let him make his own choice, even if it was wrong. And if his choice hurt someone, hurt himself, then that's his mistake, his consequence, not yours to decide." I had no answer. Because she wasn't wrong, and she wasn't entirely right. And the space between those poles was where I'd been living for 3 weeks. "I want to stay with Aunt Teresa." Maya's voice was quieter now, the storm passing, the decision already made. "Until Dad is out. I don't want to be here." There it was, the choice, the consequence. The 12-year-old choosing her father, choosing the absence of her mother over the presence of her betrayal. "If that's what you need," my voice didn't break. Not yet. "I understand." Maya nodded, adjusted her backpack, walked toward the door. "Maya," she stopped, didn't turn. "I love you. Whatever you believe about what I did, I need you to know that." She left without responding. The apartment returned to silence. The light through the windows was gray, November now, the gold of October long gone. The photograph on my desk remained face down. I didn't turn it up. I stood in the living room where I'd once read her bedtime stories, where I'd helped with homework and celebrated birthdays, and promised her that families stayed together even when they lived apart. Lies. All of it. Beautiful lies we tell children so they'll believe the world makes sense. I sat on the couch, looked at the door she'd walked through. Career? Gone. Partner? Gone. Daughter? Gone. All that remained was the knowledge of what I'd prevented. A murder that didn't happen. A man who wasn't a killer, at least, not yet. Was it worth it? I didn't know. I suspected I never would. Time passes differently after you've lost everything. Days stopped having names. Weeks blurred into textures. Gray mornings, fluorescent afternoons, silent evenings in an apartment that used to hold a family. I measured my life in smaller increments now. Coffee made, shower taken, one foot in front of the other. The legal aid clinic was in the Bronx, a storefront operation between a bodega and a laundromat. No mahogany desks, no floor-to-ceiling windows, just plastic chairs, flickering lights, and a parade of people who needed help with problems I used to consider beneath my expertise. Evictions, custody disputes, immigration paperwork. The unglamorous machinery of justice that keeps spinning while the prestige cases make headlines. I showed up every morning at 8, left at 6. The routine was a kind of medicine, not healing exactly, but numbing. Something to do with my hands while the rest of me remained frozen. At night, I wrote letters. To Maya, sent weekly, returned unopened at first, then simply unanswered. Updates on nothing. Declarations of love that felt increasingly hollow on the page. The words a mother offers when she has nothing else to offer. To Dominic, never sent. I wrote them anyway. You'll never read this, but I need to say it. I saw the gun. I heard what you said. I knew what you were going to do. Maybe you would have stopped yourself. Maybe you would have found another way. I'll never know. You'll never know. That's the cruelest part. We'll both spend the rest of our lives wondering. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. I don't know anymore. The letters accumulated in a drawer, unsent, undeliverable. A conversation with a ghost. 2 months after the hearing, the clinic. My desk, smaller than my old one, metal instead of mahogany. Ms. Cross? A voice I recognized. Shaw. Thought you'd want to know. The Chen investigation is closed. I sat very still. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. A client waited in the lobby with paperwork I'd promised to review. Insufficient evidence, Shaw continued. The brake line tampering couldn't be conclusively linked. Traffic camera footage was inconclusive, and Mr. Chen has become uncooperative. Uncooperative. Marcus Chen, who'd been so eager to destroy Dominic, suddenly unwilling to pursue the investigation that might have put him away for life. Why uncooperative? Hard to say. Shaw's voice was carefully neutral. Word is he received a settlement, $50 million, from Vaughn Industries, shortly after your ex-husband's incarceration. $50 million. The board had paid Marcus off, closed the loop, protected the company even with Dominic in prison. So it's over. The investigation is over. Shaw paused. What actually happened, well, that's between you and your conscience, Miss Cross. Is that why you called? To make sure I know you know? I called because you stopped something. I don't know exactly what. I can't prove anything. But someone was planning something, and that something didn't happen. Maybe that's justice. Maybe it's just luck. He hung up without goodbye. I stared at the phone. The investigation was closed. Dominic was safe from murder charges, not because he was innocent, but because I'd moved first. The technicality that imprisoned him had also protected him. Was that justice? I had no idea anymore. 3 months,
A Sunday morning. The caller ID made me freeze. Maya. Hello? Mom? Her voice was small, uncertain. The cold accusation from our last conversation nowhere to be found. It's me. I know. My voice cracked, just slightly. The first fracture in months of control. I know it's you. Maya's breath caught. 12 years old, trying to find words for something too large for words. I wanted to say, I'm okay. I just needed time. Take all the time you need. The words came automatically. The mother's reflex. I'm here. Whenever you're ready. Silence on the line. Traffic somewhere in the background on her end. The ambient noise of a life continuing without me. I know, Maya said finally. I know you are. Maya, I have to go. Aunt Teresa's calling. But Mom? Yes? I don't hate you. I just don't understand. Neither do I, sweetheart. Neither do I. I sat with the phone in my hand. The first call in 3 months. Short. Brief. No forgiveness, no reconciliation, no explanation. But she'd called. It wasn't healing. It wasn't understanding. It was something smaller than that. A crack in the wall. A reminder that the people we love don't always stay gone. The photograph on my desk remained face down. I didn't turn it up. But for the first time, I looked at it. Acknowledged it was there. 3 months down, 2 years and 9 months to go. And somewhere in Otisville, Dominic was counting the same days, wondering the same questions, building his own version of what happened and what it meant. Sooner or later, we'd have to face each other. I just didn't know what either of us would say. 6 months. I put it off as long as I could. Told myself I was giving him space. Told myself I was respecting his anger. Told myself 100 lies that all amounted to the same thing. I was afraid. Federal Correctional Institution, Otisville. Visiting room. Glass partition. Phone receivers. The architecture of controlled contact, designed to let people see each other while preventing everything that seeing is supposed to mean. I sat in the plastic chair, waited. The room smelled like industrial cleaner and the particular despair that seeps into walls when enough broken people have sat within them. He entered from the far door, khaki uniform, silver threading through his dark hair more pronounced now. 6 months of prison aging him faster than normal time. His posture was still commanding, still the CEO even in prisoner's clothes, but something had changed behind his eyes. Harder. Colder. The calculation I had always known was there, but without the warmth that used to soften it. He sat across from me. The glass between us caught the fluorescent light, smudged with fingerprints from 100 other hands that had pressed against it, reaching for people they couldn't quite touch. Neither of us picked up the phone. We sat in silence, looking at each other. 15 years of marriage, 5 years of divorce, 6 months of prison. All of it compressed into the space between one pane of glass. Finally, he reached for the receiver. I followed. His voice was controlled, the voice he used for hostile negotiations, the voice he used when he'd already decided the outcome. 3 years. 3 years you took from me. You were going to take the rest of your life, or someone else's. Maybe I was. His jaw tightened. Maybe I wasn't. You decided. You had a gun in your drawer, Dominic. You told me you didn't see another way. What was I supposed to do? Wait? Yes.
The word was a knife. You were supposed to let me choose, even if the choice was wrong. Would you have done the same? Stood back and watched someone you loved walk toward destruction, trusting their autonomy more than your fear? I don't know. I never will. And if you'd done it? My voice cracked, just slightly. The first break in 6 months of controlled performance. If you'd killed him? What then? Maya grows up visiting you in maximum security. I explained to her that Daddy made a mistake he can never take back. Don't use her. His voice sharpened. Don't you dare use my daughter to. I didn't do it for her. The words hung between us. On either side of the glass, in the space where all our history lived. I did it for you, because I still see the man I married, the one who wasn't a killer. And I couldn't watch him disappear. Silence. Dominic stared at me through the glass, those steel blue eyes that had once made me feel seen. Now they saw something else. Someone else. A woman he didn't recognize. A woman who had loved him enough to destroy him, or controlled him enough to call it love. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost gentle, and that was worse than any fury. That man's already gone, Natalie. You just didn't want to admit it. I stared at him, processing. Maybe he was right. Maybe the man I'd been trying to save didn't exist anymore. Maybe he'd disappeared years ago, during the first marriage, the divorce, the slow accumulation of wealth and power that had hardened him into something I feared. Maybe I hadn't saved anyone. Maybe I'd just proved that I couldn't let go. The glass between us reflected both our faces, superimposed, overlapping. Two people who had once been one, now separated by everything that love and control had built between them. I had nothing left to say. I hung up the phone. Slowly, deliberately. Stood, gathered nothing, I'd brought nothing. Walked toward the door without looking back. The parking lot. Gray winter afternoon. The kind of light that makes everything look like a memory. I got in my car, sat behind the wheel. Didn't start the engine. He was right. Or he was wrong. Or maybe both things were true at once, and the cruelty was that I'd never know which version mattered more. Did I do the right thing for the wrong reasons? Or the wrong thing for the right reasons? I sat in the parking lot for a long time. The winter light faded. The gray became darker gray. Other visitors came and went. Partners, parents, children, all of them carrying the particular weight of loving someone behind bars. I started the car. Drove away. The man I'd married. The one who wasn't a killer. Maybe he was still in there, somewhere. Buried under the prison sentence, the fury, the sense of violation. Or maybe he'd been gone long before I testified, and I'd just been too afraid to see it. 3 years is a long time to wonder if you made the right choice. Long enough to stop asking. Long enough to start living with the silence. Months passed. The legal aid work continued. The routine held. One afternoon, a shadow filled my doorway. Claire. She'd aged too. Or maybe I was just seeing her clearly for the first time since the hearing. The precision bob still perfect, the evaluating eyes still sharp. But something in her posture was different. Uncertainty where there had been certainty. Can I come in? I gestured to the plastic chair across from my metal desk. A long way from the mahogany conference rooms we'd once shared. She sat, folded her hands, the posture of someone who'd rehearsed what she was about to say. I came to say, I'm sorry for how I handled it. You did what you thought was right. I destroyed your career. I destroyed my career. You just made it official. Claire studied me. The evaluating gaze I'd once valued now felt like an intrusion. I thought principles mattered more than people, she said finally. I thought rules were more important than... She stopped, swallowed. Then trust. Then friendship. Were you wrong? Claire's eyebrows, those bold eyebrows, furrowed. I don't know anymore. That's what I came to say. I don't know if I was wrong. I don't know if you were right. I just know that I testified against someone I respected, and I've been living with that for 6 months. Now you know how it feels. Claire flinched. The first time I'd seen her truly uncomfortable. I suppose I do. She stood, moved toward the door, paused at the threshold, the same threshold she'd stood in at the firm back when watching was enough. For what it's worth, she said without turning. I don't think you're a bad person. I think you're a person who made an impossible choice and paid for it. Is that supposed to be comfort? No. She turned, met my eyes. It's supposed to be honest. She left. I sat at my metal desk. The fluorescent light buzzed. The pile of cases waited. No reconciliation, no forgiveness. Just acknowledgement. Some fractures don't heal. They just stop bleeding. 3 years is a long time to wonder if you made the right choice. Long enough to stop asking. Long enough to start living with the silence. 3 years. 1,095 days. 26,000 hours. Time measured in concrete walls and fluorescent lights, in the slow accumulation of thinking that prison imposes on men who've spent their lives in motion. Dominic Vaughn walked out of Federal Correctional Institution Otisville, carrying a small bag and nothing else. The morning light was sharp, October again, the same month it had all begun. The same quality of gold that had streamed through Natalie's office window the day he'd called asking for privileged consultation. Full circle, or something like it. No one was waiting. His lawyer had offered to arrange a car, a press strategy, a carefully choreographed re-entry into public life. Dominic had refused. He wanted to see what freedom looked like without anyone standing between him and it. A town car idled at the far end of the parking lot, sent by the company, the board's gesture of continuity, or perhaps just the muscle memory of service. He walked toward it slowly. There was no rush now. There hadn't been for 3 years. Through the window, Manhattan approached. The skyline he'd helped build, deals and towers and the architecture of ambition, rose in the distance like a city he'd once known. Vaughn Industries had survived, barely. The board had kept the lights on, paid the settlements, managed the crisis. But the empire was diminished, valued at half what it had been. The Forbes profiles had stopped. The invitations had dried up. 3 years was a long time to be absent from a world that doesn't wait. And yet, fragments surfaced as the car moved. Nights in the cell, replaying the conversation in Natalie's conference room. The weight of the gun in the drawer. The face of Marcus Chen, the man he'd planned to kill. The choice he'd almost made. The choice she'd taken from him. Would you have done it?
If someone you loved saw you walking toward a cliff and pushed you into a cage to stop you, would you eventually understand? Or would you spend 3 years deciding that the cage was the only thing you could never forgive? Vaughn Industries, 47th floor. The corner office that had once been the center of everything. His assistant, new, nervous, too young to remember what he'd been before, stood as he entered. "Mr. Vaughn, welcome back." He didn't respond. Walked past her, into the office, to the window. The city spread below. The same view, different man looking at it. The desk drawer, the one that had held the gun, was empty now. Evidence, confiscated, returned to some locker in police storage. The weapon that had almost ended one life and destroyed 2 others. He stood at the window, let the silence accumulate. One phone call to make first. But not yet. First, Marcus Chen. The unfinished business that had started everything. Marcus Chen's office. Different building now, smaller, less prestigious. The empire he'd tried to extort had diminished, but so had his leverage. Dominic entered without announcement. Security moved to intercept. Marcus, visible through the glass wall, waved them off. Curiosity, perhaps, or fear, or the strange pull that exists between men who've been planning each other's destruction for years. Marcus sat behind his desk, 48 years old now, heavier. The comb-over more desperate. The eyes, those calculating eyes, darting between Dominic and the desk drawer where his own protection waited. "You're out." "I'm out." Silence filled the room. The kind of silence between 2 people who know too much about each other, who've imagined each other's deaths in vivid detail. Would you have said it? If you'd spent 3 years thinking about the man you almost killed? Would you have the courage to admit what you almost became? Dominic spoke first. 3 years ago, I was going to kill you." Marcus's hand froze halfway to the drawer. "I had a plan, a gun, a date. The conference, your keynote. I'd worked out how to make it look like an accident." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because someone stopped me." Dominic's voice was even, controlled, the voice of a man who's had 3 years to rehearse. Cost them everything to do it, their career, their reputation, maybe their daughter. Sent me to prison to keep me from becoming what you deserved. What do you want? 50 million. You sign a release, you disappear from my life. That's the offer. Marcus laughed, short, incredulous. The blackmail was worth 200. The blackmail was worth your life. Take the 50. Call it a bargain. Marcus studied him, looking for the rage, the calculation, the predator he'd feared for 3 years. It wasn't there. Something else was. Fine. The documents were already prepared. Dominic had known what the answer would be. 3 years of thinking teaches you things about leverage, including when it's time to release it. Marcus signed. Dominic took the papers, walked toward the door, stopped. For what it's worth, you were right. About the fraud. About how I treated you. When we built the company together, I squeezed you out. I told myself it was business. It wasn't. I was wrong. He left without, waiting for a response. Marcus sat alone in his office. The signed documents, the 50 million, the apology he'd waited 15 years to hear. The war was over. Nobody won. 3 days after his release. My apartment. Small now. A 1-bedroom in Brooklyn, 5 flights up. The law practice I'd rebuilt from the wreckage. Family law,
pro bono cases, the kind of work that doesn't make headlines but keeps people together, or helps them come apart with dignity. I was at my desk when the knock came. The afternoon light was soft, October again, that particular gold that seemed to follow this story from beginning to end. I didn't check the peephole. I knew. Dominic stood in the hallway, 3 years older, the silver more pronounced in his hair. The suit simpler than the ones he used to wear, expensive but not ostentatious. Something had shifted in his face, the sharp edges still there but controlled differently. Not marble anymore, something more weathered. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. The weight of everything unsaid filled the space between us. 5 years of marriage, 5 years of divorce, 3 years of prison. The gun in the drawer, the courtroom, the glass partition. That man's already gone. He didn't come in. I didn't invite him. I need to know one thing. I waited. That day in the prison, you said you did it for me. Was that true? Or did you do it because you couldn't stand that I didn't need you anymore? If you could undo every choice that brought you here, would you? I considered the question. 5 years I'd had to think about it, 1,000 letters written and never sent, 1,000 variations of the answer I might give. Both, I said finally. Maybe. I don't know. He waited for more. I saw you about to destroy yourself, and I couldn't watch, couldn't let it happen. Was it love? Was it control? I've had 5 years to figure it out. I still don't know. Dominic nodded slowly. Not forgiveness, but recognition. I settled with Marcus. 50 million. It's done. Good. I didn't kill him. I know. Because you stopped me. Yes. The hardest part. The part where we stood in the wreckage and acknowledged that it was wreckage, that we'd both built it, that neither of us could see a way out that didn't involve walking through. I'm picking up Maya this weekend. His voice changed, softer now, something almost vulnerable. She asked if you'd come to dinner, Saturday. I said I'd ask. My breath caught. Maya, asking for me. What do you want? He looked at me. Those steel blue eyes that had once made me feel safe, then made me feel afraid, then made me feel nothing at all because feeling was too expensive. I don't know either. There it was. The admission that mirrored my own. 2 people who'd loved each other, destroyed each other, saved each other, and couldn't tell the difference between any of those things. He turned, walked toward the elevator, stopped. Saturday, 6 o'clock. If you want. I stood in the doorway, the invitation hanging in the air like smoke. Not forgiveness, not rejection. Something harder. The possibility of beginning again, with no guarantee of where it leads. Later that day, the light had shifted. Golden hour through my small window, the kind of light that makes even modest spaces look like they might hold something beautiful. I sat at my desk, the desk I'd bought second-hand when I started over, smaller than the mahogany one I'd lost, cheaper, but mine in a way the other never was. On its surface, a framed photograph, new, recent. Maya and me at her school event 3 months ago. She's 15 now. The braces gone, the face longer, the woman she'll become starting to emerge. In the photo, she's smiling. Really smiling. And I'm there in the background, watching her. Present. We're rebuilding. Slowly, imperfectly, the way damaged things rebuild. The bar license is gone. In its place, on the windowsill, a small plant. Something living. Something that needs tending. I looked at the empty chair across from my desk, the one clients sit in now. Different clients than before. Eviction cases, custody disputes, domestic violence survivors who need someone to believe them. Smaller problems. Bigger lives. I looked down. Maya's name on the screen. "Mom, Dad said he asked you about Saturday. Please come. I want us all at the same table, even if it's weird." I read it twice, 3 times. The words from a 15-year-old who'd once told me I controlled everything and called it love. Would you have gone? If you'd spent 5 years wondering whether you'd saved someone or just proved you couldn't let go? Would you have the courage to sit at that table? I typed back, "I'll be there." Set the phone down, stared out the window. I don't know if I saved him or controlled him. I don't know if what I did was love or possession. I don't know if he'll ever forgive me, or if I'll ever forgive myself for not knowing the difference. I looked at the empty chair again, at the photograph of Maya, at the small life I'd built from the wreckage of the large one. But I'll be at that table Saturday. And maybe that's how it starts. Not with answers, with showing up. The afternoon continued. Another case file. Another person who needed help navigating the end of something they'd thought would last forever. Life continues. Not because the wounds heal, but because we learn to carry them. The law called it privilege. I broke it anyway. I said that once, in the dark, when my hands wouldn't stop shaking. They're steady now. Not because the wound healed. Some wounds don't. They become part of you. The way you walk, the way you hold things, the way you love. 5 years. I still don't know if I saved him or controlled him. I still don't know if what I did was the deepest love or the deepest betrayal. Maybe they're the same thing. Maybe that's what no one tells you. The photograph used to be face down. I couldn't look at it. Now it sits on my desk. Maya and me, rebuilding. Some fractures don't heal. They just stop bleeding. And then, slowly, something grows in the cracks. Saturday, 6 o'clock. I'll be there. Not because I have answers, but because showing up is its own kind of answer. Some betrayals destroy what they touch. Others reveal what was always underneath. The love that wears control's face, or the control that wears love's mask. I never learned the difference. Maybe none of us do. This is American Billionaire Tales, where fortune meets fate. Next time, a wife discovers her husband's secret flight, but she's been preparing for war long before he knew it had begun.